And we're back with another episode of Before You Buy, that show we give you some straight up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. As usual, it's me, your uncle, Jake Baldino. I'm not actually your uncle, but today we're talking about The Last of Us Part 2. Oh boy, where to begin? I will say thank you guys for your patience with this one, even if you might hate me after this one. I know a lot of you guys rely on these videos, but I had to get through all of it to see this game and really give it a chance. I'll be talking about the game itself and not really as much about any controversies, just the game. Also, keeping in mind, I will not talk specific spoilers, and I'm not showing much in gameplay, only mostly early-ish sequences, but keep in mind, it's going to be hard to talk around spoilers, at least to get my point across, so I'm going to be dancing around some things, so be warned. I'm not showing spoilers, but I'm showing a bit more than the average review from the big websites, because they were kind of limited with what they could show. I can now show whatever, so watch at your own risk. Now, my biggest problem after The Last of Us, a game I really loved, is that I didn't really need a sequel. So the hardest mountain this game had to climb, for me personally, was justifying its existence. Well, believe it or not, and I may be going against the mob here a bit, I think it's a pretty good game. There's some story stuff up for debate and some gameplay issues that bothered me quite a bit, actually a little bit more than the story. I'll get to those in a bit. Rest assured, this is another, rollicking and entertaining Last of Us style adventure, and it's a good, interesting time. And no, nobody's paying me to say that. I'm here to give you some guidance, but ultimately, decide for yourself on this one. Anyway, jumping right in, it's a few years after the first game. Joel's brother Tommy, Ellie, etc., they're all settled in Jackson, Wyoming, the really well put together survival colony. You get adjusted to life here. You get to really see this very well thought out and designed place and how it all thrives, and it's really interesting. That is, of course, until stuff happens and Ellie goes out on a new adventure as one of the main playable characters. This is a big-ass, massive, lengthy adventure spanning multiple time periods and multiple playable characters. It's not like a journey across America like the original game, and that's something I loved and I did really miss here. But the big focus is mainly on Seattle. It's the main location, pretty much. And Seattle in the Last of Us universe is an absolute hellhole collapsing in on itself. Think of basically some of the most horrendous locations from the first game, the hairiest stuff where things were really chaotic. And that's really what The Last of Us Part 2 is almost all of the time. That's not to say it's all action. This is still a single-player, story-focused game through and through. The thing that so many players say we still don't get enough of? I'm happy to say that there's tons of story and dialogue and long contemplative moments where the game takes its time developing the characters and the plot and stuff. Lots of cutscenes, lots of characters, especially quite a few from the original game, who get some really cool moments to shine in ways you wouldn't expect. The gameplay is surprisingly extremely close to the first game. Maybe it's just because I just came off playing through the original game again, but despite some big additions, the moment-to-moment gameplay feels pretty similar, which isn't a bad thing. I don't know. It's almost survival horror-ish, especially on the higher difficulties, as you just kind of scrounge and rummage for supplies endlessly, crafting throwable and melee weapons, and then you battle human and clicker enemies. Combat is, of course, desperate. It's what makes these games pretty great. Every gunshot is a loud, scary crack. Every hit is devastating. You're always down to one last bullet. People fight dirty. It's a desperate battle for survival. And it can really have some tense moments, Encounter areas are much bigger, giving you more opportunity for stealth. Unfortunately, there are only a few new tools on the stealth side. Otherwise, you're still always just kind of tossing bottles and bricks. Just always doing that to a clicker or a human. Almost to a comical level. I was really hoping for a bit more new stuff on the stealth side other than them just adding dogs that can track your scent, which I will say does shake it up kind of good, but they're only used sparingly. But I was hoping for more. I wanted more tools on the stealth side, because Ellie can now go prone and crawl around and hide in tall grass, and it works really, really well. but it's one of the few things that feels new. Besides Ellie always having a knife, so you don't have to craft shivs, which is really convenient. Also, there's a jump button. I know people were talking about that, but it's absolutely useless unless it's for a specific section. But Ellie's faster, so she can kind of quickly lose enemies by slipping through tight areas. So you're less bulky, you can move around quicker, but you're mostly boiling it down to just doing the same thing. Sneaking up, grabbing dudes and monsters from behind, and then slowly choking them out or stabbing them in the neck over and over and over again. Rinse and repeat. And many of the enemies, their AI can still come off a bit dumb. You know, they're still effective, and now they know each other's names, and they'll call out more stuff. It seems like there's more intelligence. Sometimes they can hunt you down, but occasionally, like I said, you still have moments of manipulating them and awkwardly making them seem dumb and getting the upper hand. Really, this is an incredibly lengthy game, and my biggest issue is that the gameplay loses impact over the course of it. There's tons of variety, and it's well-paced, but every enemy scenario by the last third of the game or so, I was really getting tired of choking people out over and over again. It's the same few animations, and you lose the impact of the incredibly realistic and disturbing deaths. And it kind of just becomes a thing to do. Maybe that's the point, story and theme-wise. Okay, I get it. But from a play perspective, by the end, it outstayed its welcome a little bit. I was more into the story than the moment-to-moment gameplay. I was like, all right, I want to get to the next story bit. Thankfully, it does at least try to shake it up. There are only a few new enemy types on the clicker side, but it makes things pretty interesting. I will say, the game really capitalizes on the horror and dread. The first game had that great, like pit of your stomach type feeling that you'd get. I was worried that they wouldn't be able to replicate and nail that feel again, but I'm happy that they really did. There are some incredible horror moments here, and I don't think people talk about the Last of Us series as a horror genre enough. Also, on the new side, there are some pretty great and fun new weapons that I won't spoil, and the game kind of does the Uncharted Lost Legacy thing, where it'll occasionally throw you an open environment to cruise around and explore and do little side objective areas. They all feel substantial, though, all those little side things, and let me tell you, they are vital. You get important equipment by doing the side stuff. The game rewards exploration really well. The weapon upgrades are a bit more exciting visually this time around. They put a ton of work into that, but the skill tree thing is really satisfying. Like the first game, you pick up supplements to dump points into skill perk type things like more health, better crafting, stuff like that. But this time it's blown out into multiple branches of different types of expertise, and it lets you kind of focus and build where you want quite a bit. It's not like a full-on RPG, but it made dumping points into your characters much more interesting and actively engaging for the long haul, and I was super impressed and happy with it. You guys know me, I'm a progression nerd, and for a story game like this, the consistency in the weapon upgrades and the character upgrades hit that perfect sweet spot for me. Story-wise, the story makes some big, bold, divisive moves. Many of your favorite video games and movie series have tried this before. Results may often vary, but I appreciate attempts, and The Last of Us 2, for me, does a couple big story things, and about 70% of it really works for me. The remaining 30% doesn't quite. It's going to be up to the individual person and fan. There were a couple of things I wasn't into, but I did not take it as the end of the world as a Last of Us fan. You spend a lot of time with a lot of characters in this game, literally walking miles in their shoes for hours and hours, and it earns a lot of the stuff it tries to do. It seems more effective if you really put the time in and experience it all. Of course, this is all going to be down to personal tastes and preferences, different strokes for different folks. I'm trying to be reasonable here. Also, it's hands down one of the best looking games I've ever seen, which is crazy to have that come out of my mouth. I play primarily on PC, but I was still so blown away here. The graphics are powerful, but coupled with some incredible art and environment design, the game really is a sight to behold. I find myself so much in this game. It actually took much longer to complete because I would walk through sections instead of sprinting just so I could look around. That's what I kind of loved about the first game, and I love it here too. Also, characters look incredible. You get the emotions in their faces, like all the things the actors are trying to play off consistently every time, because all of the performances are rock solid. And plus, if we're talking audio-visual side, I also found myself digging the music a lot. Even a bit more than the first game, especially for the scarier moments, which, like I said, the game does have a nice amount of. Also, there are tons of options. The Last of Us gameplay can really shine if you turn off the HUD and crank up the difficulty if you're feeling nasty. And it's a good, challenging video game fun time. And since I'm talking about options, there's also a lot of different adjustments and stuff for accessibility. So if you have certain functional issues with your hands, or maybe you're colorblind, you can still experience the game, and that's pretty cool. Really, as a whole, with the smaller gameplay complaints and a couple of story misses, I still chalk this game up as an overall win. It doesn't match the sweet kind of simplicity of the original game, but it tries to do more and go bigger, and I commend them for it. So even if I think it doesn't quite reach the heights of the first game, this was still a hell of a ride, and I was glad to play through it, and I'm looking forward to playing through it again, because there's a lot to chew on. It's consistently interesting, there's a lot of world building going on in the background, and it's just a big old AAA video game adventure, almost to an excessive degree. But it's a heck of an achievement, and it's like incredibly lengthy and pretty satisfying, and of course, this is a before you buy. I'm gonna wrap it up. This is how it goes down. I gave you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinion. So of course, now we want to hear yours down in the comments. Let us know what you think of the game, if you've played it, if you've experienced it. What do you think of the characters, new and old? What do you think of the environments, the new enemy types? Do you have gameplay issues like me, or was that just me? Am I being a hard ass? Let's talk about anything The Last of Us and The Last of Us 2 down in the comments. Things get a little crazy though, so if you want to yell at me directly, find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jake Baldino. But of course, thank you for watching. We really appreciate how much you guys show up for our Before You Buys. Personally, I put a ton of blood and sweat into these videos, so I do appreciate you guys showing up for the last couple of years now. We've been making these videos for so long. But if you enjoyed it or found it useful, clicking the like button is the best way you can help us out. And if you're new, maybe consider subscribing, because we put out videos every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.